I am Miguel Farias. I am an experimental psychologist focusing on religion, rituals, belief in general. I'm based both in Coventry and in Oxford. I started out as a cognitive behavior psychotherapist, so my original motivation was actually to be a practicing clinical psychologist, psychotherapist. While doing my undergraduate degree, I became somewhat bored by it. So I started just reading a lot, and because I was very interested in religion, I started looking at what psychology had to say about religious experience, religious belief, and that eventually just led me to become an academic. The original project was to fund a network on indigenous knowledge and belief in Brazil. I have been doing research in Brazil as an experimental psychologist for over 10 years and making use of its fertile religious soil. For example, we've done quite a lot of studies with Afro-Brazilian religions. We are faced with recent evidence which clashes against our Western ideas, even of the Amazon. So, for example, in England, school children learn a lot about the Amazon, biodiversity, but we're also fed this romantic idea that the reason why the Amazon has all this biodiversity is because it has been kept in a pristine, innocent state. And what we have learned in the last 10, 15 years is actually no, there's been indigenous people moving and living through this large forest for over 12,000 years at least. And we've only recently learned that these people have contributed very substantially to the biodiversity, to fostering the biodiversity, because of course they are collecting fruits and seeds from one place and taking them to another place. And although there is a huge biodiversity, it's the majority of species, the most prevalent species, are those which are used by humans in the Amazon forest. And this is not just by chance. So we are now finishing a website with lots of these podcasts where we have asked anthropologists to speak to a wide audience. So we're targeting an adult audience, but we have also been experimenting with kind of educational projects in schools to see how can we move. So the Brazilian government has actually a law that says that there has to be an educational program about indigenous cultures in schools. But as it happens, very, very few schools have anything on indigenous cultures. So we're trying to look at ways, how can we change this and actually allow these school children to have access to some of this astonishing and very counterintuitive knowledge from these indigenous peoples. So I did visit the Ministry of Education in Brasilia that has a whole unit dedicated to indigenous education. However, 99% of what they do is actually build schools for indigenous populations. And but for the last 20 years, there has been within the indigenous populations an attempt to create what they call hybrid curricula, where you have both the Western education but also the indigenous education. I genuinely think that we have something particularly these days with the climate crisis, the environmental crisis, is the direct consequence of, 300 years of a predatory action on how we relate to nature. Precisely because we have developed a very alien relationship to nature and even to our own bodies. And I think we can gain very valuable insights from these cultures who have a different relationship to the natural world.